but we will be recording the session, as you just have heard that. So Playbook is officially partnering with ADPList, and all of the ADPList members, all of you here today, will be able to get 4 terabytes on Playbook website. So where you can actually store all your design and all your art and collaborate, almost like a Dropbox for designers and artists and illustrators as well. If I were to put it that correctly, Jessica. So I'm super excited about the product. In fact, when we announced the partnership, many people ping me as well. So we love that. And Jessica just raised a new round for Playbook for their company. So congratulations. So it's an extremely special day for all of us to kickstart this partnership as well. With that said, Helen will send in a link. Yep, she's sending a link where all of you can claim the 4 terabyte of storage. Now that said, my name is Felix. I got to introduce myself. My name is Felix, and I'm the co-founder at ADPList. And we have Jessica, who is the co-founder at Playbook, and she was actually the first designer at Opendoor. So I'm not sure how many of you know about Opendoor, probably a lot of you, but it's sort of like a housing startup. And Jessica has amazing background in design and experience, and an amazing human being overall. So I'm super delighted to have invited her here today. And so I'll pass my time on to Jessica for your introduction, and you can kickstart with the session.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Felix. Wow, this is so, I feel so like honored to be part of this and to be here. It was just so recent actually that Felix came over to San Francisco and that we actually met in person. And I invited him to the office. It was an empty office by myself because Fridays we usually work from home. And so Felix came by, and then that's the first time we met. That was like a month ago, wasn't it? And then we talked about partnership then, and then that just like everything just like started from there. It's really cool, you know, how we just develop these relationships, especially when we're both starting our own companies. And it's always nice to meet people who are kind of like me, you know, entrepreneuring, also designer. So anyways, it's so great to meet you. I am a designer. I've been a designer for about 15 years now. So I started my career as an engineer. I turned into something else. It was something else. I actually was a chemical engineer first, and then mechanical engineer first, and then computer engineer, and then data scientist, and then became a prototyper. So more like a front-end engineer, and then finally full-blown UX designer around when I basically turned 27. And then I kept going as a designer, and now I'm the CEO, I'm the entrepreneur now. So my career just keeps going, and I feel like I'm just constantly changing roles. But I feel like I've been in design role probably the longest out of all of those roles. So I can say that I am a designer. My identity is a designer. I'm building a design tool right now, so for designers. Let's see. I know now that where everyone's coming from: Argentina, LA, Austin. So I kind of looked into some attendees' backgrounds just so that I know where you guys are coming from. Are you guys mostly product designers? UX designers, UI designers? I also talked to a whole group that was full of graphic designers yesterday. So I would change my topic based off who's, there you go. Okay, perfect. I thought ADPList is mostly UX, UI designers. Career transitions, yes. Students, product designers. Great, so nice to meet you. Today is one of the first 3 sessions that I'll be running on ADPList. This one is about what are some of the things that you want to include in portfolio. It is actually a topic that I talk a lot about because I've been a hiring manager for a very long time in design industry. Not only at Google, I was at Google for 7 years. I hire a lot of people. I interview probably hundreds of people and review hundreds of thousands of resumes. I also went to a lot of campuses to recruit designers. And then the second time I hired a lot of designers was on Opendoor. I was Opendoor real estate startup. I was the founding designer and then turned into a head of design. So I was building my own design teams. I was running the entire design department. And so each one of those designers I hired myself individually, either from Dribbble or, ADPList wasn't around at the time, just all over the place. So yeah, that's why I have a little bit of like sort of experience and background, and what are some of the things that people are looking for in people's, design portfolios, especially new grads, new designers, or earlier in their career. So if you have any questions like related to that, I think Helen just said some, add your questions in the form.
Yeah,
Cool.
I can read them out loud if you would like to start with them now. So just let me know when and I'll start going with them.
Yeah, I will wait until the end of the session.
Okay, cool.
Great. So right now I'm the CEO and co-founder of Playbook.com, where, as Felix said, we are the cloud storage made for designers and creatives. A lot of our users are freelancers, designers, graphic designers, and video illustrators. So we live very close to the design industry. So we have a partnership again. So we're giving away 4 terabytes for designers. There will be more perks for ADPList members. We're tracking which ones are coming through which promo. So eventually we'll find a way to give away some more cool things to you guys. Okay, let's get started. This is actually a part of a lecture that I gave to design community on Dribbble. And when I gave this workshop, there's about 3,000 people attended. And it's like a shortened, much more condensed version of it. Where can I get the recording? It's past midnight. Oh, I see. I think you can answer that, Helen, afterwards, right?
Yes, absolutely. The recording will be on the ADPList YouTube channel later on. We're going to publish it everywhere. So you're going to see it on our socials for sure.
Cool.
Thank you.
I actually have some lecture. So I pulled out some slides that could be very relevant to you guys. Because it was a 3-hour long workshop when I did it last time. And this is supposed to be just like 1 hour. So I wanted to get the most important slides out of that workshop. So what's the job market right now? Design job market. It's going pretty strong. There are a lot of startups looking for designers. It's like insane number of startups looking for designers right now. And then it's going very global. Now it's not just contained in America. All the hiring managers are looking for, can I hire somebody from EU? Can I hire somebody from, Brazil or Canada? Or now people are just going remote. It's less of the physical is becoming a less constraint. So that's changing. What else is changing? The job market is going pretty strong. The senior designers demand, there's too few senior designers right now. So the demand is very, very big for senior designers, but the number of senior designers are pretty small compared to that demand. It's also senior designers tend to kind of stop working after a certain, number of years of experience. So that's why the number actually does get smaller. It's not staying exactly the same. That's also, there's huge number of people coming from design schools now. I think that because product design is a relatively new field compared to most other fields that I've seen, like engineering or product management, all of those have been around much longer than product design. So the sort of the influx of all the new designers are happening right now because of all the programs that have been implemented recently. Even Stanford doesn't have a really good design program. Berkeley started to have a decent design program, but it's still like not very good. I don't know if anyone's from Berkeley, but this is just the schools I've seen so far around me. CMU is one of the oldest and they've been around longer than anyone else. And now the SCAD and all the sort of RUSD, they're all developing some sort of product design programs right now, which actually makes it the number of new designers coming into the market higher. And of course, there's boot camps also happening as well. And then there's people who are also transitioning between from a different career into another, just like me. I've never been to a design school in my life. I just sort of converted, like transitioned basically more gradually myself into a designer. So that's what's happening in the job market. So again, the job market is going strong. So you're in a good place right now. And that would mean your portfolio means a lot because there are still a lot of jobs available for earlier to mid-career designers. It's just that portfolio is like much more important, because just imagine if you're a hiring manager at Google, you're sitting in the stack of thousands of resumes and portfolios, and you have very little time to go through them. We almost never go through all of them. It's just impossible to go through all the application portfolios. So, at most, each application is getting a second, 2 seconds, or up to 6 seconds. So this is why I keep telling every designer that come into sort of from graduating or into the market is make sure that your portfolio is good enough for the first 6 seconds. That is probably one of the more important things ever. You end up working on portfolio. And after you pass that 6 seconds is when we tend to spend a little more time. It's like we like something that we saw, like something that was just attention grabbing. And then we tend to look around, we read a little more, we just scan things through, and then we end up going to your LinkedIn profile. We end up seeing a little bit of like about you section and see if there's anything interesting there. There's a kind of like, we're trying to pick up a lot of signals in your portfolio as an application. And that usually lasts, usually about half a minute or things like that. But that 6 seconds, first 6 seconds is basically what counts the most for a lot of people, because that's when you go from thousands of application to basically, maybe 50 application that this person ends up spending a little more time on. I hope this makes sense, but let's dive in. And this is the graph that I was basically explaining, just the way that it's disproportionately, we spend a lot of time just scanning in 6 seconds. And then there's a very few ones we spend a lot more time on. Okay. By the way, you can see the slides, right, Helen? Yeah, perfect.
Yes, we can. Yeah, and we are getting questions, so go ahead. They're coming.
Oh, they're coming. Okay, good. Okay, well then I'll just go through fast so that I can do this. Oh, actually, before I jump into all this, I don't know if so I was going through one of the attendees. I mean, it was one of the profiles that I saw. I was looking at who I was talking to. So I pulled out one of the profiles. Is Ashley here? Okay, maybe she's not here. I hope she's okay with it.
I don't see her name. Yeah.
I hope because she said yes to this event, and then she just happened to be one of the first profiles in the event, and I clicked on it. And she just so happened that she had a profile page, and with the LinkedIn and website. So I just clicked on it just to see, like, who am I talking today? So she's actually a perfect example is what I meant by earlier career coming into the market. And this is actually one of the many types of, she's great. I think her portfolio is fantastic. It's just that this is one of the few, this is one of the sort of most common portfolio styles that we see as a hiring managers. And then seeing sort of school projects, usually there's like 3 or 4. So Ashley needs probably a couple more, but we usually see school projects because most of the time when you're graduating or you're doing something coming out of boot camps and things like that, you don't really have a real life examples. So this is often we see is just 2 or 3 school projects. And then there's about page, of course, and then there's a resume. This is a very common thing that I see. So let's go back. Sorry, I have a lot of tabs on. Hopefully this is not giving anyone anxiety. This is how I work to see what I mean by. I hope I can hide all these. So it's like, how do you grab people's attention? How do we grab like hiring managers' attention? One simple thing that you could do, and this is almost like a hacky thing, this is purely psychological too, is that you have to pick a recognizable brand because it makes us pause. Like, did that person work at DoorDash, or did that person work at Uber or something like, or Google? You don't necessarily have to work there, and most people don't realize it when they build portfolio. They can actually just pick any random brand, and then you just pick a problem that they're dealing with, and then just solve it. And surprisingly, a lot of people love it. Like hiring managers love it, and they don't care if you work there. There's something about that makes you look like a really passionate designer, a designer who cares a lot about designing, and putting the right things to the world. So a lot of people are very like worried about, oh, is that like, do I have to disclose this? Do I have to like give, say that I've never worked there? You don't have to say all those things because your resume, your LinkedIn will say it that you've never worked there. But something about just like you can even start with the first paragraph. I was very passionate. I'm very interested in mobile, maybe food delivery app. And this is a problem that I was constantly seeing in app review. And I wanted to solve it for this company. And you can start by saying that. Just by saying that, just again, you just sound like a very passionate person. And there's many ways you can pick all these UX problems. You can go to any of these like review sites, and then you see tons of 1-star reviews. And there's most of the time people complaining about like product not working as intended. So you can pretty much pick any of those user complaint and turn that into a much more interesting problem statement. How might we, of course, it's like, how might we solve, food not getting cold? And then hopefully that the user understands where that the food delivery person is stuck in the traffic or something like that. You can turn it into something, a problem to solve. And then you can wireframe it very quickly. Again, this doesn't take that much time. I'm pretty sure every one of you is very problem solver. You know how to solve this problem. You already probably know this in your head. And sketch out the problems. Go to Dribbble, find some patterns, and maybe a company's website. There's usually a brand related brand patterns you can pick up. Find a lot of inspirations. How did they do how did other companies do this and that? Try to solve a similar problem. These days, there's so many UX patterns already. Before, when I was starting out career, even then there were a lot of patterns, but now there are even more UX patterns. There's so many companies tackling similar problems. You could easily find something that's very similar. So this is where you're trying to get inspirations and find a solution that's already, that's already working, or somebody already tried to solve it. And then, of course, the prototype. You have to prototype the actual solution. Prototyping is becoming incredibly more and more important these days, especially if you're a product designer. I think it's because the tools have gotten a little easier to use. Like 15, 20 years ago there was no design tool. So everyone ended up designing in Photoshop or something called, can't remember exactly, but Fireworks, or it's now that app is dead, but either Photoshop or Illustrator files. Like it was just like we were trying to make graphic design tool to work in product design because there's no tools out there. And now there's a lot. There's Figma, there's Sketch, and there's probably, I can name probably 3 or 4 prototyping tools that people have made. There's a lot of these things are available now. So the barrier to entry to these design tools have gotten lower, which means that your skill has to be higher, because now the competition will be a lot higher. People just saying that I know how to use Figma is not good enough. So now you have to say, I know another tool that does prototyping. I know another tool that does, visual design. So there has to be something else. So this is a good time if you have been thinking about actually picking up another skills. Find something that's like complementary to product design. That tends to be either visual design if you're a much more visual person, or that tends to be prototyping if you're much more sort of problem solving, like more logical kind of engineering mindset. So you can pick either of those two. I would highly recommend doing prototype, even if you're visual design. This is another example. Again, pick a recognizable brand. And this is this is a workshop that I just kept going. I'm just hitting them with the 4 steps. So like, pick a recognizable brand, basically find a problem that you have. This particular one was actually a real thing that one of my mentees did. He had a trouble scheduling with a time and date with his study group. So, and there's no good way to do it. It's like, oh, are you available on Tuesday? When are you available? So there's no good way to do that. So he wanted to have that a part of a feature in Facebook Messenger. And I was trying to get him to, use recognizable brand. And he was like, oh, well, then I will try to design this feature as part of Facebook Messenger. And he did. He went and actually did a lot of he was inspired by all these things that are already available, like Google Calendar. He was looking for all these solutions that are already out there. And then finally, of course, he came up with a solution that was, part of Facebook Messenger. It's not showing right now, but it was part of a Facebook Messenger. He made a prototype and he put it in his personal website. And after he graduated, he got a job at Google. So it was, even though he never worked at Facebook, it was not a problem for Google people. It was just very interesting problem. And of course, the Google has a calendar, which means it has a relatable problem that they're solving that he already solved. So that actually turned out to be really like a big win for him. So I'm just going through sort of the recap of, if you have 4 things on your portfolio, if one of those things is a kind of a brand that people tend to recognize, it's a good thing because it makes people pause in the beginning. And you don't have to say you worked there or you didn't work there. You could say that in the intro section, just makes it sound very optimistic, like be very positive about it. So say, I really wanted to solve their problem. And then be inspired, go to Dribbble or go to any other competitor apps and then find a solution that's like similar to it, and then solve it and finally prototype it. And then you can actually write all of that process down as part of your portfolio. Most of the time they take usually about even less than a month to build a project like that in your portfolio. The key is to do it by yourself and not rely on other project members and things like that, because hiring managers don't really like having a project where there's like 4 people worked on it, because we don't know which actually one of you did this and did what. It's very hard for us to know. So we tend to ignore the projects that are done by a group of people. So I was going to say, this was the kind of example I was giving in that workshop, that how this just looks like, any other portfolios, 99% of the portfolios look like this, with 6 different projects and student projects, and then it's just not a whole lot of spark, but you can turn it into something that's it's sparky. So it's, it's like again, with that kind of recognizable brand, and then making sure that your thumbnails are beautiful. It's almost Dribbble-like. So yeah, that's how you can grab people's attention in the first 6 seconds. That was the first part of the workshop. And then going into the second part of the workshop, I talked about, once you get past the 6 seconds, what do we look for after that? And usually what we are looking for is these 3 things. we want that person to be warm and likable. We want that person to be thoughtful, and we want that person to be very competent. 3 things. And competent is usually, it comes through portfolios, but it also comes through resume as well. So I will talk a little bit about resume too. But first, why warm and likable? This was, Google actually did, research on this. The Google people department, so HR department, they did study how coworkers see each other. And this is how coworkers actually put their colleagues into these, so people basically put their coworkers and colleagues into these kind of quadrants. And this is so interesting, is that you can actually say that person is competent and warm, and that would be in this bucket. And then you could say that person's incompetent and warm, and you could be in this bucket. And you could be that person's competent and cold, and you're in this bucket. And if that person's incompetent and cold, you're in this bucket. Obviously, nobody wants to be in this, bottom right corner, cold and incompetent. That's just like, you're on your way out. Nobody wants to work with you, and you're also not very competent. So why would anyone want to have you on your team? So that is the worst place to be. You don't want that. Warm and incompetent is surprising. You will hear this a lot, is when people say, he's great, but he's nice, but I still have to pick up a lot of stuff. That's the kind of vibe that you get whenever somebody puts that person in this quadrant. So obviously the best place to be is you are competent and warm. Oh, what about this cold and competent? And this is where we know that we tend to describe this person, label this person as what is it? It's like a competent assholes. So they're very competent, but you don't really want to work with them. It's like you don't want to be friends with them. There is whenever there's a startup, especially the first 20 people we end up hiring, there's this rule, startup hiring rule, Sunday rule or something like that. Sunday rule. If you come into the office on Sunday because you got some work to do, and if you see this person, are you happy or are you not happy? And that was usually a Sunday rule. And that was actually part of a hiring thing that people talked about, something about, because startup is so small, every person is like 10% of the company. So you want to make sure everyone get along in the company, and the communication is flowing because they like each other and they trust each other. Trust is actually a big thing on a team. That's how you get a very extremely high performing team versus low performing team, is when people don't trust each other versus people trust each other. So if you get a cold, competent person, and the trust becomes low, very low. So people stop sharing information, people stop, trusting one another. And that's when you get a team that's not really working that well. So you're talking about hiring manager who are trying to hire a new person into the team. Obviously, this person wants the person to be warm and competent. So that's what I mean by when people say, I want to hire somebody who's like warm and likable, that's why. Because that person wants the high performing team when people can trust each other. So yeah, that is mostly, okay, well, I haven't talk about the thoughtful and competent part. The competent, let me see if we have a better example of competent resume example. And then thoughtful is actually, it's just come through this is, how like product portfolios tend to have a lot of process written down. So most hiring managers don't care about the process in the beginning, because we just want to see the output, which is, we're just looking for competence part really quickly. Because again, we have thousands of resume and portfolios to go through. We just need to go find that competence really quickly, getting that signal right. So once you get past the 6 seconds, and we tend to go through that work process a little bit. So it goes backwards actually. So you scroll all the way down and see the actual final output, and then you'll go back up and then read. If we like the final output, we tend to go back and read the process, which usually what we're looking for is this person like, can this person communicate? It's the thoughtfulness of it. It's like, if this person and my teams are working together, can they communicate with each other? They can communicate their decisions and their rationales behind it. Can they do that? So that's when this part becomes important. So let's see, let me pull out some resume examples. Sorry about that. Let's see. This is Playbook, by the way. This is my Playbook. Yes, so this is an example that I give, and I'll be sure to include this in ADP page as well. I see a lot of people just writing down freelancer in their LinkedIn or resume, or they're too shy most of the time because they feel like it's, you know, working on some friend's startup or something, and they don't want to put it as like a real job, or working on some, you know, being part of some kind of community, and then it wasn't like a paying job or something. People get very shy, so they end up not putting anything on the resume. Instead, they just call it freelancer, or I was design students or something like that. And then most of the time there's no descriptions. You kind of have to shamelessly like actually, you know, advertise yourself on your resume. Even if you did some kind of help, you know, you helped your friend's startup out and then design a product, maybe initial product for them without actually getting paid, you can actually elaborate. You can say a lot of things like, I led the design from end to end user experience process. I did a lot of user research myself, and, you know, I ran, you know, there's a lot of things you can describe as, you know, just even that 1 week worth of work, you can actually spend it out. And that's kind of important because, you know, that makes you look like a pro. It's like, you know what you're talking about, instead of nobody wants to hire anyone that's like, I'm still learning. Nobody wants to hire anybody who's like, I'm still learning. I mean, the humble part is great, but we always want to hire somebody who can actually help me with the problem that I'm trying to solve right now. So you have to kind of flip it around. It's like, I want to hire somebody who can actually help me solve this problem that I'm experiencing. Even if you're, you know, junior person or early in your career, that haven't proven quite yet, but I still want to know, I want to know that you can solve this problem that I have, that I'm not constantly like hand holding you. So it is very important that by writing this down, you are actually coming off as I can solve it. I'm a pro, I can do this. So that's why this is so important. And I was talking about, this was the example I gave Ashley. I wonder, is Ashley here yet? I hope she's okay with this. Again, I thought her background.
See her, but I will let you know if she comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, she's great. It's just a random application I pulled out from the members here. She's also career transitioning. So this is why I find that really fascinating. It's like, I feel like her application is very, very close too. So you can see that she came from a very different background, and she's basically becoming a designer, coming through some sort of boot camp, I think, boot camp or brain station. She is an expert, I could tell. And then she could actually apply her expertise into like pharmaceutical startups. Let's say she can apply those jobs as it doesn't necessarily have to be a product designer right off the bat, but it's like, I'm an expert in, you know, pharmaceuticals, pharmacy, you know, operations. I can come in, I can do a lot of operation. I understand users. I understand because I was in the middle of it. I understand the problem. And then they would be so glad to have somebody like that on the team. Not necessarily you'll be doing Figma or a sketch right off the bat, but this is what people want. Is like, can you solve my problem? Can you understand this problem? Because it's not many people understand this particular niche area. So she can come in like that, and she can gradually turn herself into a designer. So this is what I call backdoor career transitioning, and this is what I did too. I became good at one thing. I got hired, to do one thing that has nothing to do with designer. And then it took me 2 years to become a designer, but that's sort of how I just squeezed myself into that career, because going head on is really, really hard because the competition is fierce. So finding that kind of specialization has nothing to do with design is actually really important too, especially if you're career and transitioning. So that is her, and I'll close that. Thanks, Ashley. Been very helpful. Anyways, so we got about 20 minutes, and this was Dribbble one. I'll share all this, and I'll also share some of the. I tend to grab also like people's and there's like awesome onboarding UX flow. Like Duolingo has like this awesome UX flow. I tend to take a screenshot and just like save it, because I'm still learning as a designer. I don't, there's so many amazing designers out there. And then I feel like anytime I see any new product popping out, and then I see like their onboarding flow is better than anything else, and I tend to just screenshot it. So, and then I'll share some of that stuff too. And then there's some portfolio inspirations. Sometimes I just see, I think again, when I see really great portfolios, I tend to screen capture. And this is someone that I hired actually onto my team in my Opendoor job. So, and I thought his was also great. Anyways, Helen, can I share this in the maybe chat box?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
not this one. This one, yeah, there you go.
Absolutely.
Great. I think we can move on to Q&A.
Okay. I will just share my screen so you can see the questions too as we go along with them.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. So first up, I actually got a few votes, and we don't know who asked this question. It's anonymous, but thank you, whoever asked this question. We got a lot of votes on this. The first question is, what tips or advices can you give for career transition folks? What can they showcase on their resume when they don't have relevant working experience?
Yeah, it really is just a foot in the door, because once you have that, it's a lot easier. It's just getting in. So I am a kind of a backdoorsy kind of person. I like finding a way to get in without going through all these interview loops. So back when I was career transitioning constantly, I came in as like, I'm a front-end developer. I can prototype all your designs. So I became basically a developer, basically a prototyping person for all the designers on that team. And that's how I got into the sort of that company that I wanted to work in, but not necessarily I was a designer right away. And then more and more, and then of course it took me a while, but eventually I did. But that was kind of a moment that I was like, I wish people should know this. This is what I meant, that example, that Ashley's example. I think she can easily ping anyone. There's so many, pharmacy startups out there. They're looking for operations people. She can basically squeeze herself in as like, I can help. But I also am very, very interested in doing product design. Is it okay if once in a while I do mock-ups for you guys? So that's kind of like, you can go not so traditional route of like trying to interview for design roles. You can actually go different routes. So if you're a mechanical engineer going it, maybe you go for startups that are, in the mechanical engineering field, and then you find a way you can actually be very valuable to the team.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you so much for that. If anyone, the person who asked is Zelia, I think it's her name. So thank you for your question. Yeah, let us know if there's anything else I think that answered her question. Thank you. So the next question is actually, I think A in Zoom is Ashley. I'm understanding Ashley is here. So yeah, so the next question is from Ashley. I'm not sure if it's the same Ashley, maybe it's not the same Ashley, but the next question is, what are some major red flags found in junior portfolios?
Red flags. A lot. There are a lot of red flags I've seen. I think that we like to see product design portfolios should be very much like I'm solving another person's problem. Sometimes we see a lot of junior designers that think that portfolio is a way to self-express, and that's a very like artist angle. And a lot of illustrators are okay because they are artists. But product designers, you're solving somebody else's problem. You're coming in as an expert, almost like a consultant to come in and say, I will solve that. And I will do user research. I'll be as logical and rational as possible. If that person is using design to self-express and portfolio to self-express, it's usually not a great sign. So that would mean like having a lot of personal branding on portfolios, like having very strong this is me kind of like a statement, like sometimes there's a very elaborate like personal logo there. Or there's some things are so distracting that you can't really see actual work. So those are usually pretty big red flags.
Amazing. Thank you for naming them. I feel like a lot of people can definitely learn from those. I feel like those are some questions that people may have, how much expression purposes, so thank you for clarifying that. Thank you actually for your question. The next question we have is from John. What do you suggest to designers who dislike all of the work they've created recently?
I am one of those people. I think designers we always hate our work. And I think that's like 99% of the time. It's not great, especially the first 3, 4, versions are always not that great. It gets better and better and better, usually with inputs of other people. And sometimes it gets worse because the input is not that great. So it's a finding a right balance, but it does get generally better once you keep going. Dislike all of the work they've created recently. All I can say is keep going. We're in a creative industry, and it's very hard to put something out there and create something. So, but once in a while you get a jackpot. Like once in a while, there's a period of time I was very I joined a startup as first designer, which meant I was the only designer on that team, and I was very lonely. So I wanted to be a part of a community of designers, and ADPList wasn't around at the time, so it was a long time ago. So I got on Dribbble and I just kept posting like work just by myself, just to get any kind of, fellow designers feedback. Not even feedback, just encouragement, because Dribbble is usually like, yeah, that's great. That's usually the most I get. But, once in a while, there's just like one of the work just becomes very popular all of a sudden. Like I don't understand why. I don't get it. It's weird. So sometimes those kind of stuff just happens, and I still don't know why. And then some work also that maybe designers put it on portfolios, and I said this is not great, but sometimes they're saying that's not great, but hiring managers are like, oh, this is great. This is very weird in that you have to actually constantly get other people's feedback, because we really don't know as designers whether the work is good or not. It's not that clear. So usually I use my husband all the time, because he's in the medical field. So he doesn't understand anything about tech or product or anything like that. So I usually just kind of show him. It's like, hey, does this look good to you? And then he usually can point out pretty significant problems or things like that. Or I usually ask somebody else on the team and say, hey, what do you think about this? And so that's the only way really to understand where you are, where do you stand, much more, like I would say objectively.
Yeah, I feel like that's great advice. Absolutely. So there's actually a follow-up question that I just wanted to make sure to clarify if anyone had the same question here. The question on the chat by Linda was, what do you mean by self-express? When you were talking about portfolio and how much to express or not, you meant like the more artistic work, personal projects, like I think that's where she's coming from in this question. So
yeah, that's a great question. It's more, we usually, art and design is different in that art is self-expression. So it's your view of the world, so your perspective of the problem. Whereas design is, we're taking it a step back, we're looking at it much more objectively. So which means that's why there's a lot of user research going on. And somebody just mentioned, Manisha says something about end user of the work. Yes, we're constantly seeking truth through the lens of users. So it's not coming from my own perspective, but it's coming from other people's perspective. So that's why the whole reason why the way that school's teaching you to go through all that research process, the process in itself is like, it's a practice for you to think like not through your own lens, but through other people's lens. So that's what I mean by don't try to self-express. Usually when I see a lot of self-expressions is they don't do enough research, but there's a lot of like a personal branding that's very distracting, that it's almost like covering up the work that you did for other people. So that's the kind of stuff, like you should know this. You should really, as a product designer, you're coming in just with the white canvas, understanding the world through other people's lens, like perspective. That's what I meant by self-express. Like, don't do self-express.
perfect. Thank you for clarifying. I think that's nailed it. So the next question is from Clary. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. The question is, what is the most attractive feature of a portfolio for a recruiter?
Attractive feature of a portfolio. Of course, the work itself. There's nothing more important than work. Even about page doesn't matter. Having any, I actually most of the time just tell people to use a template, like any CMS builder. And that's like just very clean white. And then it just shows off your work really well. Just use that and don't even bother building anything else on the website. And then just focus on the work, and then especially the final output of the work, because again, the way the hiring managers go is like, boom, you land on the website, is it clean? Okay, good. They don't even check whether or not it's a template of another. Usually template is just so much better than anyone just try to hand coding it. So again, the website clean, you got to click on first projects and you scroll all the way down very quickly, look at the final output. And if I like it, then we go back and then basically read a little bit of it to scan it through. And whether or not this person comes off as a very like communicative and understanding of, the whole process. And then go to LinkedIn and see what kind of work experiences they have, and then go back and look at the portfolio. And then there's a little bit of go back and forth happening if so far there's a good signals going on. So that's usually how the hiring managers tend to work in their head. So work is the most attractive feature. And final output final output.
Love it. Work and final output. So yeah, let's take notes, everyone. The next question that was one of the most voted ones is also anonymous, so I don't know who asked it, but what do managers look when hiring an entry-level person?
What do managers look? Great question. What do managers look when hiring an entry-level position? It's a great question because we tend to love taking chances on people. We really do. I think it's something about, it's a nature of human being. Seeing the growth of someone is much more exciting than seeing, not seeing the growth. I think you guys should also feel that way too. When you watch a movie, character development is far more interesting than having a boring character that doesn't change. So when the main character comes and then doesn't know anything about the world and slowly understanding the world and then becoming an expert in something, and now they finally like save something, all of that is a character development, and something about that is a human nature to just root for it. And that's why, a lot of people just root for underdogs and things like that. So what do we look for in an entry level people? It is the potential usually. And it's a very broad term. Usually attitude goes a really long way, because that person, if that person's nice and kind and warm and likable, a lot of senior people on the team is going to try to teach that person because that person has a really good attitude about it. Just trying to do what he can to just absorb and absorb and absorb, and not have this attitude of like, I already know everything, or getting defensive. It's like, I don't want to take that more, I don't want that feedback, or just being angry about things or feeling self-victimizations. All of those things are terrible for junior entry-level position people. It's because that means this is what we call anti-growth mindset. Growth mindset is when you're coming in very optimistic, somewhat positive, and that you're blowing sort of energy into the people on the team, because frankly, old people don't really like myself, including myself, we don't have that kind of like, let's do it kind of energy. We lost it over many years. People just get jaded over for a very long period of career time. So that's why whenever we see young people are joining the workforce, we're very excited about it. We're very energized by it. So if you can bring that kind of positive and optimistic energy and that kind of attitude of like, I will do anything to learn, it's so important. And that's what we tend to look for in entry-level position people.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. The next question that we have, and I think this might be the last one. Let's see if we can get another one. This is from Tiffany. She asks, what aspect helps a new designer stand out among other more experienced designers?
Oh, yeah. That's a very, very good question too. Just because somebody's more experienced doesn't mean that person's better designer than a new designer coming into the market. And I believe that. I don't think that there's a designer on my team and he's like 15 years younger than me. I think he is actually truly a better designer than I am sometimes. So it's not necessarily work experience is the most important thing. And also, the peak time for a designer is usually when they completed 10,000 hours. That usually comes out to be about 3-4 years into the career. So even you spend 10-15 years, it's not like the amount of thing that you learn during that time, actually it's not that much of different than that peak time that you hit. So, and this is just based on what I've seen in my industry. So that's why taking chances and then spending that basically 2-3 years teaching that person to be, understanding like design and product and user experience and all of that is totally worth it, because 2 years is not that long of time. And if that person grows to fill that role, then it's totally worth the effort. because not only, again, there's human nature of like supporting young designers out, and this whole community is run by that human nature of helping other people out. So it's just generally human nature. Good people tend to do that. So generally, I think new designers tend to have it, tend to have that kind of advantage. So I think you can leverage it a little more. Leverage it by being that really awesome, young, positive energy person that coming in with the growth mindset. And then having some sort of, some glimpse of that you are competent. It's a glimpse of it. So it's like, it's almost like showing that you have potential, which that usually means that how hard you work to solve that problem, that really comes through your work, or you have one specialized skills that's really hard to master, even the most senior people. So usually that would be something like After Effects, something that's like specialized tool that building animations, or prototyping tool that you know specific things really well, or you can code like HTML and CSS code well. There's some kind of like a little specialized things that you can bring in, and we call them hard skills, because the experienced designer tend to develop very good soft skills, that when communication skills, persuasion, presentation skills, just being able to understand people well, it tends to grow as you, basically get much more experience. But what sort of the more younger and junior people have advantage, that what kind of advantage that they have is that being able to grasp skills very quickly, hard skills very quickly. So hard skills is something that you can actually spend more time on. You can develop very quickly, understanding a tool very fast and things like that. So that is tend to be so. Sometimes we look for a more junior or mid-level designers to be able to bring that hard skills into the team. So if you can just kind of spend a little more time in that, that would be huge.
Beautiful, thank you so much. Should we save these questions for the next group session? Do you want to do another more? How are you feeling?
Let's see, what time is it? 6 o'clock. Let's do one more, and we can save some of these questions for the next one.
Okay. So we actually got one that just got upvoted now in the last moment. So the question is, what is the best advice for senior graphic designers jumping into UX design?
Oh, that's such an interesting question, because I just taught a group of graphic designers yesterday. Senior graphic designers. Graphic designer is now these days, we don't even call graphic design anymore. We call them illustrators. Yeah, it's graphic design is becoming a more of an old term now. So you should rebrand yourself as an illustrator. So how do illustrators turn themselves into UX design? It's surprisingly, I manage both brand design and product design at the startup when I was building a team, and they think very differently, which was fascinating. If anything, the illustrators and brand design tend to think very marketing way, so marketing, whereas product design is a much more engineering way. So I thought it was fascinating that these two teams, they're under the same kind of umbrella of design that think very differently and solve problems very differently. So and this is like same as a career transition. Surprisingly, if people think of graphic design as close to product design, it's not. It's actually very different. I would go something like going to brand design and marketing. If you can be in-house and then sort of transition yourself into product design. I think that would be the sort of the fastest way and much more natural way of doing things, because you want to be also exposed to how they think and being part of the same team, the way they approach the problem and the way they interact with engineering and products. So if you want to just keep being exposed to that, and I think that a company within the same team, design team that has both of these brand design and product design, you can actually learn a ton. And it's a much easier way to get in than trying to get in UX design right off the bat.
Makes 100% sense. Freddie says thank you so much. And Zelia is already asking when the next session is. Do we already have a date?
Yes, we do. I believe actually, let me, it's on the website.
Okay, so yeah, it's in the blog post, right?
Oh, it's next week, exactly the same time, Wednesday. So exactly 1 week from now.
Okay, great. So yeah, for anyone who wants to register, look out for information on adplist.org. The group session or RSVP is there. Same process. So yeah, if you did it once, should be able to do it again. And of course, like if you have any questions, reach out to ADPList team, myself included. Happy to help and help everyone continue this conversation with Jessica next week. Thank you so much, Jessica. I'm sure I can speak for all the participants, and all the thank yous are raining in the chat. So thank you so much for your valuable tips, wisdom, everything that you share. I'm sure that there's so much that everyone got to apply and to make sure that, you know, they can already act on it. So thank you so much for sharing your perspective, your experience, and all of the references too. I'm sure that a lot of people took a lot of advantage out of that. So yeah, everyone, if you want to continue this conversation next week, same time, just RSVP. And yes, Jessica, do you have any final words for the participants? Anything else?
Oh no, this was run so smoothly. Thank you, Helen. It was so great. I feel very comfortable just the whole time. And I had a really great time. And also thank you so much for coming to the session. So I will see some of you next week, Wednesday. This is so fun.
Yes, please everyone, come next week. Let's continue the conversation. And yeah, if you haven't checked out the link to see the Playbook ADPList partnership to get your 4 terabyte, is terabyte, right? Gigabyte, I always confuse those
terabytes,
things.
yeah.
Terabytes. So yeah, to get your 4 terabytes on Playbook to build your portfolio, share your work, everything that Jessica just did, pretty much. So everyone go ahead and check that out. Definitely recommend. And once again, thank you, Jessica, so much. I'll see you guys next week and talk to you soon. Thank you, Jessica, again.
Guys, bye.
Bye.